So it's easy to start a war, but
What do you
once
think is the
you
right
start
move?
the war,
What do you think is the right move? What do you? You're an advisor. You've said a lot of crazy things, which is very interesting, and I like to hear what you're saying because when everybody is saying the same exact thing, you're not learning leaks. You need to hear and what other people are saying. What do you think is the right move to do here right now for both U.S. and the Gulf states?
if I were the Gulf states if I were the United States, my advice would be to organize a conference for 4 countries: the United States, Russia, Iran, and China. Do not include the Europeans. Do not include the GCC. Do not include Israel. Just these 4 countries: United States, Russia, China, and Iran, and come to a collective agreement where these 4 nations agree on a new trade relationship based on the US dollar. I think all 4 nations are interested in maintaining the US dollar as a global reserve currency because no one else wants that global reserve currency status.
Why would you do that if those three all hate you, and if you're in a meeting with them, China's not necessarily an ally, Russia's not necessarily an ally, Iran's not necessarily an ally. Why would I hold this meeting knowing it's 3 against 1? Trump would never host a meeting like that knowing the leverage isn't on him, right? And so he's got the support of Gulf states. They're on his side. He knows he doesn't with China. He knows he doesn't with Russia. He knows he definitely doesn't with Iran. Why host a meeting like that? I don't see the logic behind that. Feel free to push back. I don't see the logic behind that.
Well, I mean, the reality is that America is going to have a hard time holding onto its empire. And Trump has said this many times. Because America is the world reserve currency, because America is responsible for protecting the sea lanes, then America is basically screwed by the world, especially the Europeans, who don't have to pay for their own defense, and who can use their savings to fund their lavish welfare and pension system, right? So it's not in the best interest of America to maintain its empire. If you're an average American, you're paying way too much for this empire. So why not just retreat back into the Western Hemisphere? The Western Hemisphere is completely self-sufficient. It has Canada, it has Mexico. Hey, if I'm Trump, I'm like, you know what? Screw Iran, screw Ukraine. I don't need these places. I'm going to take over Canada and Mexico because Mexico has a surplus of labor, cheap labor, and Canada has infinite resources.
A lot of people agree with you on that. A lot of people agree with you. But here's the problem, though, Jiang. The problem is we're in too deep right now. So this is a good conversation 45 days ago. I'm saying to you, we just killed the top 50 leaders. They're a martyr type community. Like, you know how you ever go against the company and they're very litigious and you want to play nice and they're like, no, we're litigious. Sue, 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 sue. You have to fight, fire with fire. So I'm talking today. If you go in the room and say, okay, let's play nice with Iran, they're like, you're out of your flipping mind. And if we say, hey, Iran says we want to play nice, you're out of your, and we know Russia and China are going to side with them. I don't know if that strategy works today. I do know. Do you think Trump has a ton of leverage over NATO right now? Do you think the leverage he has over NATO?
Look, you can make the argument that Trump is not just at war with Iran. Trump is ultimately at war with the globalists, right? The City of London, Wall Street, global finance.
Yes.
Right? So NATO represents the globalists, and Trump hates NATO, and NATO hates Trump. I think Trump has been trying very hard to come to an agreement with Putin for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
They had that Anchorage, Alaska meeting. And what happened afterwards? Well, NATO and Ukraine are continuing to attack Russia. There was that drone assassination attempt against Putin.
Yep.
The Ukrainians have blown up 40% of Russia's oil exports, just most recently. So there's a lot of bad blood between Ukraine and Russia, between the globalists and Trump. So if you're Trump, right, who's your enemy? Is your enemy Iran, Russia, and China, or is your enemy NATO and the globalists?
Well, he's constantly complimentary of his relationship with Xi and Putin.
Yep.
If you ever notice when he speaks, he says, look, I'd rather be friendly than not friendly. We had a good talk. We're going to go visit back in May. We have some scheduling conflict. We're going to go back. I had a good talk with Putin. I had a good talk with Xi. So he knows how to speak to these power players and have them under control. It looks like, you know, that night when he was given a speech, the 23-minute speech, which 9 p.m., I think this was last week, I thought he was going to say something radical like we're leaving NATO. I thought he was going to say the Gulf has announced they're funding the war. I thought he was going to make some kind of a big announcement like that. I don't think there was any big announcement there. But to me, if you had an easier way to get rid of IRGC, question for you, is the world a better place with IRGC no longer being in power and it being replaced by some sort of a democracy?
Look, I completely agree with you in that the great fear is that Iran becomes much more extremist and much more theocratic than it is now. The Ayatollah Khamenei was considered a pretty moderate individual. His son is not considered moderate, and also he's considered incompetent. And so the people around him will be able to control him. We can expect like the most hardline elements in Iran society will emerge triumphant from this war if this war continues. So my best advice is for these four countries to sit down together, see Putin and Trump will agree to pressure together Iran to come to a settlement. Listen, at the end of the day, Russia is supporting Iran. If Russia were to if Russia were to pull its support, it'd be very hard for Iran to continue this war effort.
That I agree
So Putin
with.
has a lot of leverage over Iran, right?